Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Odinic School of Mysteries. My name is Bear. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate that you spent some time to come and visit with me and hang out with me and all that good stuff. So, I should tell you that you're probably going to hear a lot more traffic noise in the background today than you do normally, and that's because I have all the windows and doors open. I have all the windows and doors open because my darling boy turned off the chest freezer without telling anybody. And of course, my wife and we didn't notice. And so all week we've been looking for some strange smell that has been started to permeate the apartment. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And today my wife this morning trying to get the kids ready opened up the freezer to get an ice pack out, and it was a giant puddle of meat sludge. Yes, you heard me right. It was a puddle of meat sludge. And my wife, being very vegetarian, you could guess who got to clean that up before his coffee this morning. And that was me. I had to clean it up before my coffee this morning. And so the windows and doors are open in order to air everything out. This has been a wild week, you guys. It's been, migraines are really bad anyway for me. I have pretty chronic migraines, and this has been an exceptionally bad week for all that kind of stuff. So just please bear with me, and just give me a little bit of grace on this one. It's going to be interesting because I'm still not thinking quite as sharply as I would without a migraine and having to inhale rotten meat all morning. All right. So, every so often, I get a request to become someone's teacher. Now, it's not very often, but it does happen. Most, I would say 90% of the time, it's someone who isn't very serious about it. Sometimes it's just a crazy person on the internet, and sometimes it's someone who's relatively serious. What I do typically, is there's a list of things that I have someone do. And there's a reason for why I have this list of things I want someone to do. One, taking on a student is a huge responsibility, and it takes a lot of time and effort on my part. And so if I'm going to take the time to help someone, I want to make sure that they're a serious student. They're not going to play games with me. So, and two, the things I have them do are very specific to mind work. And so I wanted to kind of go over this list with you, and so I can explain why, if you're going to join a mystery school, or at least a real one, and of course I'm very biased because you just should know that, because I had to do the work, and so I don't have a lot of patience for pretenders when it comes to other mystery schools. So I'm going to go over this. Let's go over this list, and I will. And I want to tell you why I have people do what I have them do, because this will kind of give you some insight into how the process works and why things are done the way that they're done. Because everything is done on purpose. Everything is on purpose. Nothing is on accident. So this is an excerpt from an email I sent to a friend of mine. I'm not going to show you the whole email, but this is just the portion where I was outlining what I would like him to do. And so I'm not in the habit of outing anybody, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And I think my watch just broke. Lovely. Okay. So, there's an old precept that says, all work is self-work. Go So number one, go buy yourself a leather-bound journal dedicated to this purpose. You'll need to start journaling every day. Every journal entry needs to be written clearly and legibly in the third person. Writing it in the third person is very important. Every Wednesday by 9 a.m., you'll send me photographs of your entries by email so I can ensure you're doing the work. They don't have to be very long, but they do need to be about what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and what work you're doing. I may at some point ask you to include something specific depending on what exercises I'll have you do. Number two, excuse me. Pardon me. What exercises I'll have you do. Number two, you'll go buy an adult coloring book, preferably one with abstract pictures such as Celtic knots, mandalas, or something of that nature. Nothing with recognizable images. So no dogs, houses, flowers, for example. Abstract is the key. Generally, I have students color 2 hours a day in one session with minimal breaks. If you do decide to listen to music while you do this, nothing with lyrics. So something meditative in nature. You'll take photographs of your work and send it to my email by Wednesday at 9 a.m. Just before bed, you'll need to sit by yourself outside for a minimum of 30 minutes. No screens, no music, no distractions. Simply sit quietly by yourself with your thoughts and the fresh air. But before you do all of that, this is the most important part. I need you to tell me what you want. Spend a great deal of time thinking about this. Be honest. Don't try and tell me what you think I want to hear. This needs to be a formal document like you're applying for a job. Like your journal entries, this needs to be written in the third person. It needs to be a minimum of 1 page in length and no longer than 3 pages double-spaced. Okay. So, this is pretty standard for what I typically ask for. And there's very rare exceptions that there's very rare reasons why I would deviate from this. And really the only reason I would deviate from this is if I had already known the student for a great deal of time and I already am aware of the work that they've done or whether or not they've been dedicated to the work or not. Okay. So the first part. Actually, the first part is really the last part, is you need to tell me what you want. A number of you have emailed me over the last year since I started doing this. I think I started the YouTube channel in April. I think that's right. I could be wrong. April of 2019? I think that's what it is. Anyway, I started the YouTube channel at that point, and then it's only very recently that I started the podcast as well. And so in that time, a number of you have emailed me, and you've heard me ask you this question. And there's a very specific reason why you'd ask someone what they want. First thing, the very first reason is you don't know where. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. Right? There's a lot of reasons why people want to do things. And there's an old axiom that says, see the end from the beginning. See the end from the beginning. If you don't know where you're walking towards, there is no possible way of you ever arriving anywhere in particular. Right. It's like they say, shoot at nothing, you'll arrive at it every single time. Shoot at nothing, you'll always hit your target. And the same thing goes with here. And you got to be very specific about what you want. And people don't, and it seems like it's a pretty basic question on the surface, but when you really start digging down into it, it's actually super complicated. Right, because at some point you think, Well, I want power. We'll say that we want power. Do you want power? Do you really want power, or is power a means to get what you want? You don't want power. You want power to be able to get what you want. Or money, for example, is another one of those. Do you really want money, or is money just a means to something? I want a house. Well, do you really want a house, or do you actually want something else? Or is the house just a representation of something you're really looking for? Well, I want the truth. Okay. What do you think the truth will buy you? What do you think, if I know the secrets of the universe? Okay, let's say for instance that I know the true nature of Mars. We just talked about Thor recently. Let's say that I managed to come into some secret knowledge, and I have discovered the true nature of the reality of Mars, the planet Mars. How will that change your life? Will it change your life? Or will it just be another list on your spreadsheet of things that you know? Do you really want to know? What will knowing actually do for you? And so, when you have to answer this question, it forces you to start being reductive. To really spend some time pondering yourself. And that's really what all of this is here to do. All work is self-work. It's like, okay, what do I really want? Is this a red herring? Is this just a means to get to what I want? What do I really want? What do I really want? And this is what this is supposed to do. And there's a reason why. There's a very specific reason why. I was talking to my mom about this just the other day. There's a very specific reason why we ask you to write these things in the third person. So for those of you who don't know, a first person is kind of like the way you see the world, right? You've ever seen like a first person shooter where you see like an arm with a gun? It's where it's the perspective that's coming out of you. I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And I went to the store today. Third person is like the God's eye view. Right? It's the God's eye view. Instead of saying, I went to the store, it's like, so you can see like the first person view would be like, I got up this morning and I was tired and I went to the fridge and opened the fridge and just feeling a little bit sluggish, so I decided to make some coffee instead. Right? That's first person. Third person is, Kevin woke up in the morning and he was feeling tired. So he walks through the living room and he approaches the fridge, and Kevin opens the fridge and looks inside and sees nothing of value. Feeling sluggish, he closes the fridge and decides to go make coffee instead. That's third person. That's the God's eye view. And the reason why we want you to journal in the God's eye view is because it takes you out of yourself. It takes you out of your day-to-day experience and gets you practicing becoming the unbiased observer. Right. So if you're going to write, so imagine how much more difficult this is when you want to talk about what you want. Instead of saying, I want this or want that, it's like Kevin thinks about what he wants and he can't decide, so he I don't know. It gets complicated. It's hard. Right? It's a hard task. And that's partly why we have people do it. It's important to think about these things and tackle them. It was very difficult for me to write mine. I had to do the The same thing. I had to write out, what do I want? And I have to write it out in the third person. And it's, does Bear want truth? What does Bear want? And writing it in the third person forces you to step out of yourself and observe yourself from a distance. And one of the major reasons, another one of the major reasons for that is because, and again, I want to apologize. I'm in a migraine still, and I'm not tracking as well as I normally would. So my thoughts are going to be a little bit more scattered than normal. So I'm sorry, but that's just the name of the game at the moment. Okay. So the other reason why we want you to write these things in the third person is because the first job of the mystery school is to get your mind in balance, because you can't know anything really until your mind is in balance. And part of the way, well, the first step into getting your mind in balance is to understand the mechanics of how it works. And in order to get into the mechanics of how it works, you have to step back out of yourself and observe it, like you would a car engine. Right, you have to open the hood and look inside. And getting in the habit of taking on the role of the unbiased observer is the best way to do that. Because when you get in the habit of observing yourself from a distance, you'll start to notice the different characters that start to spring up inside of you. You'll start to just be able to discern the difference between the real you, your voice, and the voice that comes from your body, and the voice that comes from your gut, and the voice that comes from your mind, the voices that come from your mind, because there's a lot of things that are in there. The stuff that comes from external sources, let's say like from the Jotun, or the demons, or the frost giants, or whatever you want to call it, the forces of chaos. You'll start to be able to discern all those things. And that happens it's a pretty natural phenomenon to have that happen when you're dealing with, once you get in the habit of observing yourself from the distance. And so it's a very tricky thing. So not only are you dealing with trying to figure out what you want, which is difficult, now you're trying to figure out how to put that into words in a third person, which is really difficult. And so, but the struggle, and this is what people don't understand, I hope you guys understand it, because I've hammered this home to death, but struggle is a sacred gift. Struggle is a sacred gift. It is very difficult to understand sometimes, to feel that way, but it's a sacred gift. Struggle is creation. Struggle is creation. So giving hard assignments is a pain in the ass for the person who has to do them, but it sets them, if they're able to do them, then they come out the other side far better than they did when they started. And, it separates the wheat from the chaff, too. And you want good students. You want good students. You don't want to teach someone who's going to be... the first thing that came to mind was a pain in the ass. But you want someone who's going to do the work, who's going to be morally sound, who is willing to take the time to do what is necessary, and that sort of thing. And so hard assignments are part of the game, unfortunately. All right. So what do you want? And I want you to tell me in the third person. Very difficult. So journaling, which is number 1. Go buy yourself a leather-bound journal dedicated to this purpose. Again, intention is important. You You want the reason it's leather bound is because you want it to last. It makes it more official than just a standard wire bound notebook, or loose leaf paper. And you buy something that's dedicated to the purpose of learning, and that's what it's there for the purpose of journaling. It changes the nature of the object. Again, see the end from the beginning. The notebook becomes a symbol for the process. It becomes a sacred object. And it's one of those things that are, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I lost the word. I apologize. But it becomes sacrosanct, right? The journal becomes, I hesitate to use the word because it's very new agey, but a grimoire, I guess is what people would call it. I don't like that word very much, but whatever. But it becomes kind of something like that, kind of a sacred book. Because there'll be a time when you'll come back to it and you'll flip through it and you'll see where you were and be able to compare your progress to where you are at the time when you read it. And it's really something special, because you'll look back and say, wow, I was really struggling with that. Now it seems obvious. This thing I was struggling with seems obvious. I've really come a long ways. Journaling is important. It's good to get in the habit of that. It's good to get in the habit of getting your thoughts out on paper, to getting things out of yourself. Journaling also requires two parts of your brain. Writing requires two parts of your brain to work at the same time. Both your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere. The left hemisphere being the analytical portion of the writing, and the creative portion of your hemisphere is involved with the coming up with what to say and how to create the story of the journal entry. So writing, it forces your brain to work in both hemispheres. And then with the added challenge on top of that of writing in the third person, which we had just covered why we do that. Again, it's to get you looking at yourself from a distance. It's very illuminating. If you take the time to do it, you don't have to be a dedicated student to do this. If you want to try it, go for it. Write a journal entry about something you're struggling with in the third person, and you'll see that it's very, it's a good way of figuring out some stuff that you wouldn't have normally figured out. Number 2, go buy an adult coloring book, preferably one with abstract pictures such as Celtic knots, mandalas, or something of that nature. So this is kind of an introduction to meditation. So there's two things. So there's this person has to do it for 2 hours a day in one sitting with minimal breaks, meaning, and that's just so that you don't color for 15 minutes, then go mow the lawn, and then come back, and then color for another 15 minutes. No, it needs to be done all at once, and with minimal breaks. So, if you have to go pee, then go pee, but in general, you don't want this to be broken up. And the reason you do this is because, so this portion of it, let's back up for a minute, kind of depends on the person who I'm talking to. Right. If someone is right-brained or left-brained. This person has done a tremendous amount of study and reading already. So I'm going to have this person do coloring instead, to really start working on the right brain portion of it. If you're talking to someone like my mom, I'll use my mom a lot, who is already incredibly artistic, who is the picture of the sacred feminine that you could possibly come up with, right? just that whole creative I could tell I'm in a migraine because I can't think of words. That creative persona, right, with all the emotion and all the stuff that kind of comes with that. So if it was someone like that who I was talking to, I would make them do math or some other right brain analytical process. But there's a few reasons why this is done. One, like I said, this person is very left-brained already, and we want to start working on the right brain right away. We want to start giving that power. Two, the reason that the pictures need to be something of an abstract nature is because we want to minimize the input of the left brain. So if you have a dog, for example, or a tree, or a flower, your left brain is going to go say, no. You have to color it brown. The tree trunk has to be brown. The leaves have to be green. The dog has to be colored this way. There's no such thing as purple dogs, right? Your left brain is going to get involved. We don't want that. We want the right brain to be involved. So abstract is important because it takes the ability of the left brain analytical side out of the equation, so you can work on that creative side. Also, 2 hours is a long time. You're going to get bored in 2 hours, and your mind is going to wander, and that's what we want. Boredom is important. Good things come out of boredom. Be willing to be bored, you guys. Let your children be bored. It's a pain in the butt. That's probably why my freezer ended up getting turned off, because my son was bored one day. And I know he's 3. He doesn't know any better. But, still, let your kids be bored. It's a sacred gift. 2 hours is a long time, especially if you're someone who's very analytical and not very creative. This is a very tough assignment. Very tough assignment if you're someone who is very left-brained. And we do that because we want that sacred feminine to be built up. Start getting used to working in those pathways. Start learning to feel emotions. And that's really tough. And that could be really, really, really tough. Especially for men. Men have a real hard time with the whole right brain side of working. And so that is why we do that. I forgot to turn my phone on silent. Okay. So in all of this, the journaling, the coloring, and then number 3, the sitting outside by yourself for 30 minutes. No screens, no music, no distractions. Simply sit quietly by yourself with your thoughts and fresh air. These are all progenitors of meditation. Those are all different forms of meditation. They're all self-work. All of these things forces your eyes inward and forces you to have to deal with yourself. This is very hard, especially, people are soft and squishy on the inside. Very soft and squishy. People are very vulnerable. Everyone is. And so we build up these masks, these personas, these ideas of ourselves that we want to be true and try and show the world. Some people do that through humor. Some people try and do that through aggression. Some people try and do that through trying to be the smartest guy in the room. Everyone has something to prove. And the way this works, and if it's done correctly, is you have to start living with yourself and being honest with yourself. And this is what all of this is meant to do. When you start having to take a good hard look at your insides, it could be really shitty. There's a lot of things in there we don't want to think about. A lot of things in there that we would rather not face up to. We all have violent thoughts. We all have terrible, dark thoughts. We all have our true feelings about certain events in our lives that we don't tell anyone and we don't want to observe ourselves. And so by looking inside, we see what is truly there, what is really there, who the real us is. And by seeing that, by observing who you really are, by knowing who you really are on the inside, the good, the bad, the ugly, then you could start doing self-work. Then you could really start making progress. When you allow your ego to die and to actually take a good look of what is actually in there realistically and start working on that, then you could start achieving balance. Then you could really start feeling emotions. You could really start making change. All these masks that we have, these personas that we embody. There's this idea of ourselves that we wish we were, right? But we're not. There's this idea that we wish we were, that we want to put forward to everyone else. Those are all lies. Those are all things that aren't real. That's the ego. And when you let go, you're willing to feel your emotions. You're willing to experience your emotions. You're willing to see all the dark, icky corners of yourself and deal with those appropriately. Then you get to start being set free. And this is the beginning of this process. So, journaling. Observing yourself. So you journal by observing yourself, right? Number one. Number two, you start using your sacred feminine. The sacred feminine is it's where all the chaos lives. That's where all the creative portion is. That's where all that stuff dwells over there. All the darkness dwells over there. And it's scary over there. And by doing that for long periods of time, you get to, it's long enough that the newness wears off, you start to get bored, and your mind starts to wander, and then you have to start dealing with your own thoughts. And that's really tricky. And then, before bed, sit outside for a minimum of 30 minutes. Again, this is a progenitor of meditation. All work is self-work. You turn off all stimulus, you sit outside, you breathe the air, you just sit quietly. It is a very important part of maintaining balance. Right? All of this is designed to force you to look inward. All work is self-work. And then, of course, the essay written in the third person about what you want. Very hard assignment. Don't knock it till you try it. It's very difficult, which is why most people don't do it. People don't want to do the work. People, they want to be like Sadhguru or Alan Watts or any of these other guys, but they don't see all the work that went involved to make them who they are. You know, and that's the thing. You don't, as Jordan Peterson said so aptly, you don't get the gold without the dragon. You don't get gnosis, you don't get freedom without putting in the work to get it. And this is the beginning of the work. And so, I mean, this goes for anybody. If anyone out there, even if you're not interested in becoming a student, this is a very good way of starting the process. This is a very good way of starting the process. Just do it you could do it on your own time, spend your own, just do it for yourself. This is a good way to make that happen. And I'm sorry again that my thoughts are so scattered this time around. I really apologize. So I hope you just give me a little bit of grace on that one. So the precept is all work is self-work. And that is really worth keeping in mind. All work is self-work. None of this, and this is kind of the big thing, is all of this, whether you're dealing with astrotheology or you're dealing with the study of gods or numerology or symbology, all of this ultimately is about you and the form and functions of the inside of you. As above, so below. As within, so without. All work is self-work. Know yourself, as the saying goes. This is written on the wall of the oracle at the Oracle of Delphi. Know yourself, and you'll know the universe and the gods. And I think that was attributed to Pitha. Know yourself, and you'll know the universe and the gods. All work is self-work. All work is self-work. All work is self-work. I can't say it enough. It's it's a process, and it's not a fun process, and that's what people I find very often don't understand. They like the idea of being the knowledgeable wizard, right? This old guy in a robe who everyone comes to ask for advice, and he knows all the secret wisdom of the universe, and everyone thinks that it's all about what's the word I'm looking for? I lost it again. Everyone thinks it's all about just knowing things. That if I know the right words in the right sequence, then I could summon a ball of light to float above my head. That's not what it is. It's not about secret words and incantations and making lights float above your head. It's about self-work. None of this stuff, none of the work is external from yourself. None of it is. And you don't really start truly understanding what is really being presented to you by any of these symbols until you start doing the self-work. Because that is what it's truly about. If you don't do the self-work and you don't understand how the principle applies to yourself and the forms and functions that relate to you, all of it is just a list of things. It's just words, 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 as the Kabbalion would say. It's just a list of things. It's like you might as well be reciting the characters' names on Game of Thrones. Right? It's just a list of fun facts. But if you understand it in an intimate way and what it really means and how it is applied to yourself in a real way, then you could start creating coffee with your mind. And people laugh at me when I say that, but you can. You could create coffee with your mind. It's not really in the way people think you can, but you could summon coffee with your mind. So, but that happens only if you have achieved balance and you've done the work. And this is the first step into doing the work. So, I hope that makes sense. And I hope that you're willing to take it and do with it what you need. All right, everyone. Thanks again for your patience. I hope you have a really great day, and I'll catch you next week. All right. Bye-bye.